So I wanted to make this video real quick because I'm a pretty new Christian and I was kind of, well, new, almost say like a year and a half or so. But I decided to look at, the Grand Canyon from satellite images because, there's like a lot of debate in between creationism and evolutionism to determine whether this is made over long periods of time or quickly by receding floodwater. And to me, it just became pretty obvious that it is made by receding floodwater just looking at it. And I also decided to just look around on the Google Maps or Apple Maps, whatever it's called, to see whether there is other like visible erosion from water, and what it's caused by something that took millions of years, or rather something that like a global flood. And so I'm just going to share a couple of screenshots that I took to maybe get you thinking, and also check out satellite images, because I think that also there's not really a whole lot of videos like this on YouTube, so I decided to just make this real quick. So this is the Grand Canyon. So the red line is the Grand Canyon, and then this yellow is pretty much like a big basin that only can empty through like the area of the Grand Canyon, because around it there's like hills. And then the blue line is the Grand Canyon, and also behind it there's other basins, pretty much like entire southern Central America. It all flows down to this area, because here in the middle you can see this a little bit, there's like a natural dam. So if there was a global flood, it would make sense that the water would, like these basins, when the majority of the water was run off the continent, the emptying of these basins would have happened right here. So as you can see from just this image, like this just looks to me like it is made by a large volume of water. But I took some more close-up pictures to show this a bit more clearly. So here there's a closer picture. So between the yellow lines is the entire canyon, and then these red arrows are side canyons that empty into the main canyon. And what evolution geology will tell you is that these side canyons are made just like over long periods of time, and I guess they say it's because of frost that gets in between the rock layers, and then it just bursts open, and then with the water flowing in from the sides, it kind of washes out these areas. But to me this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It just visibly looks to me like water, like a large volume of water flowing into this main drainage area. As you can see here at the top, between the yellow lines, there's like an entire slab of rock layer gone. It just doesn't look like cut out by a river over long periods of time, because you can see this, like these areas at the sides. This is not created by the Colorado River, but by water that was flowing from the side into the canyon. So here there's maybe a better picture where you can clearly see that these green areas are eroded by the sides, not by the Colorado River. Like the water came from top and then drained into this middle Colorado, well, where now the Colorado River is, but it just doesn't look like this entire erosion is made by this river. Even if there used to be a larger volume of water, it's not just made by a river. I think everybody can see this. I don't understand why, people would struggle to understand that this is created by a large volume of water quickly. But so yeah, and also maybe another example, if you just look at some pictures, like actual pictures from people on the ground there, you will see that there's not a whole lot of rocks laying around. It's pretty clean, which also indicates that it's created by a large volume of water that just took all the sediment, all the rocks that were loosened by the water, it took it with it more downstream. So I took some pictures at other continents and countries. I just started scrolling around, and as you can see between the pictures, there's usually not a lot of time. So it didn't take me a whole lot of time to find other erosions marks. So here this is in Brazil, I believe. So you can see that they dammed up this river, but all these little and big side canyons, they just don't look to me like made by a river over long periods of time. And here, for example, in these fields, you can see like a color difference where I drew the red lines. There's not even a river there anymore. It's just an erosion mark, more like a swampy area that got created after that the floodwater had created this erosion mark. So here at the green area, it's kind of a similar thing. It's like, why would these things even be so close together if these just were rivers? So this is somewhere in India, I believe. Again, they dammed up this riverbed, or I don't even know whether there is a river. Well, probably there is, otherwise there wouldn't be any water, but it's just weird to think that this reservoir would have been created by a river. It's more like a large volume of water washing off a huge chunk of the sedimentary layers and then leaving behind this erosion. And here again in these fields where this red arrow is, you can almost see a color difference. And this is just a leftover scar from water flowing over there. But you can see that there's no river. Here at the green area, like the green arrows, you can again see, like in the brown stuff, there's lines, also erosion, and it just looks like it has been created by water again, like a large volume of water. This is in Morocco, I believe. So as you can see, there's not really a lot of topsoil or anything, it's just rock. And yeah, maybe this isn't like the most visible one, but still you can see like there's like a main canyon and these side canyons, but there's like not a large volume of water here. So it just poses the question like how did this got created? So this is in Spain. Again, you can see all kinds of like erosion marks in these fields. And you can see that they just planted like olive trees probably, or some kind of tree. And you can see that they like planted it even on top of these erosion marks. So there's not a river or anything, it's just a scar. And it just kind of amazes me how big these things often are. And there will be other examples in other pictures where it's even way bigger. And it just doesn't look like this is created by a river. They're always like, they look kind of like trees, with the main canyon like very big compared to like the, like where would the water come from? You can see that it always stops. You would expect it to come from way higher up, these rivers. So this is in the United States, I believe. Again, like a pretty wide canyon with a very tiny river, and then always these side canyons. Like, as you can see here, like why would there be like a side canyon? If this is created by a river or a stream, it would have to go way further back. Like, where would the water come from? And of course, in the middle of these canyons now there's rivers, because the water flows in the lowest spots, but there will also be examples where there is no river, no river at all, which is really strange. So this is also in the United States. You can see like in these fields all the, like, this is the Palouse in Washington. And I don't know what mainstream geology tells that this is made by. I think they say it's made by a glacier or something, and wind erosion maybe. And it could be true, but to me it definitely looks like it's made by a large volume of water. So this is also a great example somewhere in the United States. So you have this main canyon with the fields, and then all these like tree-looking things that empty into this main canyon. And yeah, it's just like, it doesn't look like made by a river. It's like, yeah, it's obvious. I'm assuming that in most of these areas now there's not even rivers anymore. Maybe very tiny streams, but it's clearly not made by a river over long periods of time. This just looks like water erosion, a large volume of water draining quickly into this main canyon. And of course now there's a river in the middle and everything drains to the middle. But that doesn't mean that this is created by this river. So this is in Ukraine. You can see all these red lines that I drew, they are very close together. And connected to all of these red lines are, again, all kinds of little side canyons. the reason there's so much water in there is again because they dammed up the river. But it just clearly shows like the pattern of erosion that always comes back. Like a main wide side canyon, middle canyon, and with all kinds of side canyons that are usually relatively short, like these ones, and pretty wide where they connect to the main canyon. This is like exactly what you would expect from a large volume of water, causing this over short periods of time. So here the yellow area is again like a swampy area where there used to be like a main drainage channel from water flowing back off the continents, and then you can see all these red lines or side canyons that empty into this main canyon. And as you can see, there's very often not a river in there, it's just a leftover scar. And very often there's villages built inside of these canyons, so that's also very interesting. You know, you're not going to build a village where there's like a high chance of water damage, like overflowing water. As you can see here, even in these swampy areas, there's villages. So this is just above the Black Sea, and you can see that at the bottom these things are pretty wide, but they're like very short. You know, like where the red stops, that's pretty much where like this erosion mark stops. It doesn't flow like miles, like many miles or kilometers further inlands. So here there's not even a river. You can just see like a leftover scar in these fields, very close to each other. As you can see here, villages built inside this canyon, which indicates that there's not a river there. So this is also a great example. Village built inside a canyon. Here are these side canyons that are wide at where they connect to the main canyon, but very, very short. Like, why would this be there if this is caused by a river? So this is in Russia, I believe. As you can see, like these arms, side arms, almost connect to like the next main, like I don't know if you're supposed to call this a canyon. This is not really canyons, but erosion marks. You can see all this gray stuff, it's all erosion. And the green arm tree looking things. Like how, I mean, just look at this, it's just entire villages. Like how would this be created just by normal rainfall or like even like a glacier or something? It's not like what this looks like. It's just like the most logical explanation is a large volume of water flowing off these areas quickly. This is exactly what you would expect from a global flood. So this is in France. As you can see here, these forested areas where there's like fields in between the forest. This is like the same kind of erosion mark that we have seen in these other pictures. And as you can see, villages are built inside these canyons. And there's even fields in there. But there's like no river. You can clearly see that it's not made by a river. But you can also clearly see, like where the forests are planted, that there are pretty steep hills, so they can't farm this. So that's why there's trees. So it's a really good example of like an erosion scar that you can just visibly see from a satellite image. Here at this village, Montigny-le-Grand, or I don't know how you say it, but very wide side canyon and short. I don't think this needs very much explanation, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I really don't understand that people, if you watch this, that you might actually think that this is created by a river. So I'm not going to waste too much time on these pictures. You can just look this up for yourself. And I think that's just the best way to look at it, just scrolling around on yourself. So this is in England. This is also a very interesting picture. So here at the bottom, well, I think you can see where these forests are. You can clearly see this is like an erosion pattern, like a leftover. But here at the bottom you can see like here this street Branscombe area, that this is also like water immediately flowing into the sea. And it's clearly not made by a river. There's a village in there now, so there's no rivers whatsoever. And yeah, like, what other explanation can there be than water, large volume of water flowing off the continent? Here too, these little triangle, well, little, they're probably pretty big when you stand inside of one, but yeah, it's just made by large volumes of water. And also, you know, the flood of Noah, it happened about 4,500 years ago, and it makes sense that you can still see like these areas, these eroded areas at the seashore. If this would have happened hundred thousands of years ago, the seashore would have eroded like the continent further, like more inlands. It would have like took away a couple 100 meters of the continent already, and then this wouldn't be much visible anymore. But yeah, it's still there, which makes sense when it's only 4,500 years old. So here again in Australia, erosion marks. Clearly not made by a river. So here on the left side you can see this like hilly environment, and then you can see all these canyons where water used to flow off these hills into this lower area. And if you stand there, it probably looks like hills. You don't actually see that this is caused by water flowing off there. But if you look from these satellite images, it's pretty obvious. Again, where all these forests are and swamps, all leftover scars from draining floodwater. The This is all in Australia. So this is in England again. So I just wanted to show you like these little, I don't know what it's called, like these pieces of land that are in the sea, sticking out in the sea. So these are good areas to look at, like whether this could have been created by a river or not. But as you can see here at Helford, where there's like the sea coming in the land, you can just clearly see that like the width of this canyon at the bottom, it cannot be created by a river that went way higher up from inland, because I mean there's no land, it's just the sea again. So if this would have been created over a long period of time by a river, there should like be more land. There should be enough area to accumulate water, to create a large volume of water. And so there's just no possibility here of having created a large volume of water, even like many hundred thousands of years ago or millions of years ago, because these continents were already located like this, more or less. According to them, I believe continents drifted apart quickly, like in one time. That's what's caused the flood, like continents breaking apart and drifting away. Of course, is going to create massive waves and flood, together with large volume of water that was just coming from under the Earth's crust. So this is a topographical map, an elevation map from central Ukraine. So I really encourage everyone to also look up these maps and just scroll around to see like what does this look like these yellow areas, your lower spots. So here in the middle, that's where the Dnieper River runs. But are these yellow lines created by rivers or by a receding floodwater? That's the question. And as you can see here, like this white area with like yellow and a little bit of red, it's just impossible to have been made by a river. It's just way too wide, and all these like side arms that drain into this main canyon, it just looks like a large volume of water flowing off this continent. Like I don't even know like how you can think that this is made like slowly. It just looks like quick erosion. Yeah, I mean, I'm a farmer. I see quite often erosion. And yeah, this just looks like water erosion, like quick. If this wouldn't be like just one field, like a 10-hectare field, was for like, just for example, this map, then if there was like a big massive rainfall, like 50 liters in 1 minute, this is like kind of what you would see. But yeah, like even bigger, because even 50 liters in 1 minute, it's nothing compared to receding floodwater, but it's just not very obviously not created by a river over long periods of time. But yeah, just look for yourself and decide what you think. Also, something I wanted to point out is these round rocks. We find them all over the place here in the soil, and usually they're not very big, like the size of potato maximum. And I think what they taught us in school is that these are created by glaciers, melting glaciers, who then created these round rocks with like the water slowly flowing, and but and also another explanation is, I think, that they say that the seashore used to be closer in like more inlands and created these round rocks. But if you just start digging, and we often dig in the dirt here on our farm to like restore drainage and whatever, and you find these literally everywhere. It's not just in one 10-kilometer area, it's like very all over the place. And also they're like very mixed in with the dirt. Like if you'll find them at 30 centimeters, you'll find them at 5 meters of depth. They're everywhere. So to me, a more logical explanation would be that these just got carried on the land together with all these sediments that now we live on. And yeah, they just deposited together with these sediments, and that's why they're now mixed up and all over the place together with them. If there's a global flood, like all the water of the earth moving around all over the place, it's very normal to create such large amount of stones and sediments that are then deposited, while the water just goes left and right and left and right. So yeah, that's pretty logical to me. While like glaciers and like seashore, it makes no sense. There's just too much of these rocks like all over the place. But yeah. So then we come to this pretty image, which is the geological timescale, what evolutionists will say, and what we get taught at schools too, by the way. So what evolutionists believe is that all these layers, sedimentary layers, are formed over long periods of time by just soil particles getting blown in the air and then getting deposited. And yeah, but in reality, that's just not really what we see. As I just explained with like the flood water, then all of these, if a global flood occurred, and just looking at all these erosion marks that we see all over the world, then it just, to me it's just so obvious that this is created by a global flood. But when there is like erosion from receding water, then there is also water that carried on all these sediments on these continents first, before it was eroded again in some areas. So that means that all of these layers, pretty much like all these layers from here to the top, they are just sedimentary layers from the global flood. And many of these layers just get sorted. They do experiments with this on a smaller scale, And you will see that these layers form simultaneously, that moving water can actually create different layers at the time. So this explains why there are so many layers. And of course, the global flood, it took like months, a couple months before it just started, the water started receding again back to the seas. So it makes sense that there are many layers. And the problem is with for evolution that they claim that all these fossils that they find inside these layers are, you know, animals that lived in that time period. But if all these layers are deposited at the same event, then, you know, this is not a proof for evolution, actually the opposite. So yeah, this is something to think about. So the way that these fossils are, first of all, created, it makes a lot of sense that they are created by a flood, like large amounts of sediments covering up animals and then creating fossils. Like, how would fossils get created otherwise? We find like so many fossil graveyards and like so large amounts of fossils. Like right now, it's like almost impossible for an animal that dies to become a fossil, because there's just not the right circumstances. It needs to be covered and put on pressure quickly, and this is just something that doesn't happen right now. So the fact that we find fossils in all of these layers, and yeah, it's just another proof that they got created by getting covered up quickly. And yeah, but it also proves that all these fossils in all these layers are actually, they all live together, and they just got sorted based on their mobility and their living area. So those at the bottom, these are animals that live close to the seafloor, obviously get covered first. And then the higher up you go, the more mobile they are. And you know, at the top usually they will find birds. So yeah, it's pretty obvious that birds can keep flying until they run out of fuel. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. So I would encourage everyone to just look at this for a moment for yourself and look at all this erosion and see for yourself what you think this is. But to me, it's really obvious. Like, I didn't need to look twice at most of these erosion marks to see that this got created by receding floodwater. So yeah, if this is true, then literally all evolution theories and, you know, they're just wrong. They're just completely wrong. And the Bible is right.